Joining us now is Robert Weber, who is a clinical psychologist, one of the co-authors of The Spirituality of Age, A Seeker's Guide to Growing Old. And thank you so much to be with us, Bob.
Pleasure to be here, Kevin. Pleasure.
I thought we could talk a little bit about the book, and then I wanted to talk a little bit later on when we have you back about a little bit of your personal experience too. I know you've had some challenging times recently, but maybe if you could talk a little bit about the book itself. And you know, this is a show about aging gracefully, and maybe how this book can help people enhance their spirituality as they get into their older stages of life.
Yeah. Well, I think that, by the way, if people are here, want answers from me, I'm the wrong guy. Our book is based on questions.
Okay, all right.
Questions that we encourage people to ask of themselves. Like, how has aging awakened you? What illusions do you have about life still that are really getting in the way of your living? And what Carol and I do, Carol Orsborn and I, my co-author, we really try to put out there our experience of trying to wrestle with these questions. We're not saying, you know, we have the definitive answers. We are not, you know, the place to come to for that. We are saying, live these questions as we have tried to live them. Use us as perhaps an example of the struggles. The fact that it's not an easy ride sometimes. It's quite bumpy to get to your own answer. But that's the only one that we believe works for us. My answers work for me, they don't work for Carol. Carol's work for her and not for me. So if people are listening in, they should wrestle, if they decide to read this book, take the questions and wrestle with them themselves. And live their way through to an answer, their own answer. That's the gist of the book.
We talked to some of the residents coming into this segment too about their experiences too, and that's, I guess, that's the advantage of getting older too. You have a lot more experiences to you know, to think back on, and is that a good way to sort of you know, draw yourself closer to God, to your spirituality, by sort of looking and re-examining, I guess, some of your experiences in the past?
I think it is a very useful thing to do a life review. In the field of gerontology, which is the aging field, life reviews are encouraged to look back, to integrate those elements. I think one element that people need to integrate, which is not easy, is the regrets they have. So many people who are listening in, I myself, you probably as well, there are things I look back on and I say, I regret that didn't come out differently. I regret I didn't get that job or have that opportunity, or that date refused me. I think you also have to flip it around and say, and what's come of it as a result? Not the regret what was lost, but what you got that you would not have had what you regret now came through. I think that's the crucial thing. It's not so much to get stuck on, oh, I regret this, but, you know, what came out of it that has actually enhanced my life and deepened my connection to God, deepened my connection. You know, I was a Jesuit for 10 years, marvelous 10 years. I loved the community. It was not my vocation. My vocation is being what I am now, a psychologist. I do regret some of what I left, but I am living a much fuller life probably than I would have otherwise. And I think of benefit to other people.
And that's too something that you mentioned in the book too, about value as well, and benefit, being a value. I know as we get older too, and especially some of the older folks out there might not think of themselves as valuable. What are some ways to sort of get over that, or to make people understand that they are of value?
Yeah. That's a hard one for us, all of us, because society, the values of society really run right smack into the face of what aging, the realities of aging. You're supposed to be a success. You're supposed to have a productive role. You're supposed to be active. You're supposed to be, as we were talking earlier, a human doing. What happens when you can't do that anymore? You don't need to completely disengage, but can you see in what you've got now the value, a deepening of your own inner life that really anchors you, maybe more solidly than you've ever been anchored in your life. I think we're all caught in the expectations of others, the expectations of our culture. Be this, be that, do this, do that. Stop it. Stop it. Look inside. Wrestle with the questions that are in there. And don't look outside for others to confirm that you're good because you fulfilled their expectations for you. You are already God's beloved before any of that. Maybe aging is a time to really savor that fundamentally profound experience that you are God's beloved, whether you're a bouncy 20-year-old or a hobbling 90-year-old. It doesn't matter.
It's spirituality, the spirituality of age. Talk about, you talk about this in the book as well, a spiritual awakening. Maybe if you could talk about that too, and how people can come to that, or when do they come to that?
Mm-hmm. The awakening moments are unique to each individual. I mean, we think about, St. Paul from, the stories of him in the Acts of the Apostles, his getting knocked off his high horse. That was an awakening moment for him. For me, I've gotten knocked off high horses a number of times, but I didn't at times benefit from, seeing more clearly as he did. He went blind.
Yeah.
You remember, he came down blind. Then he had to get healed, and he spent time starting to see. I think we have to be patient with ourselves that the seeing, the real seeing and awakening and the seeing that comes subsequent to that may be at a pace that is not quite as fast as you want to go.
Yeah.
And I think people who are listening in need to be patient with themselves and with the working of grace, aging gracefully.
Yeah.
You need to allow the grace to work. It's not going to be on your timetable or in the way you necessarily expect or want.
Excellent. Yeah.
But listen closely.
We're going to be talking more with Bob, but we'll be discussing a little bit more in just a moment, a little bit about some of your personal experiences that you've had recently.
Yes.
And glad to see you're on the mend, but we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But first,